Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name and Hearthstone is the game, and these are the 10 best Journey to Unguro cards in Arena. Now, one quick note, I did not include legendary cards in this list because frankly most of the legendary minions would be really strong in Arena, and it's kind of boring to make a list of the top 10 cards and all 10 of them are just legendary cards, not to mention, of course, finding that specific legendary in an arena run is pretty unlikely, so I did just focus on cards here that you're likely to see. All that said, let's go ahead and jump into the list. Starting off at number 10, it is Tarcreeper. This is just one of those really high-statted 3-drops that can be very high friction for your opponents to deal with. You play it down on 3, 2-drops, 3-drops, even sometimes 4-drops have difficulty trading into this thing, just giving you a lot of trading value. Clearly it doesn't apply that much pressure to the board on your own turns, but it's just such an early game wall to slow down your opponents, and sometimes even a late game wall too, that it still does a lot of work for a 3-mana card. Up next at the number 9 spot is Hunter's Crackling Razor Maw. Much like this card is a dominant force in constructed format, it's also awfully good in Arena, even though sometimes you don't have quite as consistent of choices in the beast category to activate this thing. When you do, it can be such an enormously big hit, doing things like setting up Divine Shield trades, just giving a minion extra stats to be sturdier on the board, sometimes even giving something big Wind Fury to help you actually just finish a game. So whether you draw this on turn 2 or you play it on turn 4, or perhaps even you top deck it in the late game, there's often just something that can be done with this card. Not to mention that a 2-mana 3/2 on its own isn't the worst thing to have in Arena. So since at its base level this is a Bloodfin Raptor, an okay card, not a good one, but an okay one, with a ton of potential upside in both the early game and the late game, it just works really well for what Hunter is trying to accomplish. Not to mention the fact that it is a beast itself, so it still does activate other things like the Houndmasters and the kill commands, just making it the perfect 2-drop in Arena. Moving on to the number 8 spot, it's Charged Devilsaur. Sometimes just big minions go a long way in Arena, but when they're big minions that can also instantly make value trades, they go even farther, and that's exactly what Charged Devilsaur can do. This is more than just a War Golem, it's a War Golem that can instantly kill that Boulder Fist Ogre and stick around to provide some additional value in the process. This card is really one of the best late game neutral minions we've seen in Arena thus far, and you can't go wrong picking it. At the number 7 spot is the 7-mana weapon for Paladins, Vine Cleaver. Of course, weapons are gods in Arena. They're just so good because you really don't mind sacrificing your health to preserve your board. So any 4-attack 3 durability weapon would be fantastic in Arena, but the fact that this also actually establishes minions on the board in the process makes it even better. And don't undervalue a couple Silver Hand recruits. They can do a lot of things. Sometimes they serve as a ping effect, killing off that last 1 health of a minion that you otherwise couldn't get because you're a paladin and not a mage. Sometimes they're just extra damage on the board. Sometimes they're buff bodies for the dino size on turn 8. Vine Cleaver is just relentless in what it does because you get to attack so many times and still continue developing minions in the process, so you're not sacrificing any board or tempo to play Vine Cleaver. In fact, you're gaining a ton of it. I feel like Vine Cleaver is one of those cards that when you play it, you know it's the last thing that your opponent wanted to see, and those are some of my favorite kinds of cards in Arena. Moving on to the number 6 spot, it's the Rogue's Vile Spine Slayer. There are really 2 big things in Arena that help you win games. They're hard removal and they're board swings. So essentially anytime you can deal with your opponent's stuff while developing your own, that's a board swing. Anytime you can just kill their giant threat, that's hard removal, and somehow Vile Spine Slayer actually manages to fit both of those into a single card. Unlike Assassinate, which is just removal but doesn't actually develop a threat. Unlike Flame Strike, which is just removal but doesn't actually develop a threat. Vile Spine Slayer actually does both. It kills something, basically anything, and it also plays a nice little 3/4 minion along the way for only 5 mana. The only downside of this card, of course, is that you do have to activate it via combo, but that's not a difficult thing to do in Arena or in Rogue especially. So this just becomes a powerhouse card that gives you ridiculous mid-game turns and often just gives you really crazy ridiculous turns in the late game when you can start to remove the big stuff that your opponent plays without any problem, often leaving yourself enough mana remaining, because this is only a 5-mana card, to develop multiple other minions or accomplish other things with your turn, which is really nice. On to the number 5 spot, it is Shaman's Volcano. This is one of the best board clear spells that we've ever seen in Arena. The only thing that doesn't make this card more frustrating is that Shaman isn't the strongest class necessarily in Unguro Arena meta right now. But if it was, Volcano would be a nightmare to play against time and time again, simply because this is the ultimate flexible board clear. Spells like Flame Strike, for instance, they do 4 to everything. So if your opponent has a 7 health minion out there, there's just not much you can do against it, right? If they have a 10-10 minion out there, you're especially doomed because Flame Strike doesn't hurt it at all. But with Volcano, you essentially have the ability to kill a 10 health minion by itself. You can kill a board of 7 2 health minions, no problem. Volcano takes care of it. Of course, the only downside here is that you do hurt your own stuff, but often in Arena, especially for only 5 mana, you can kill everything of your opponents while then playing your own things after that, making it the perfect board swing card for late game Arena plays, but also just a good catch-up card. If you have to play this right away on turn 5, it can essentially slow down your opponent enough to give you time to get back into the game, making it really one of the best AoEs we've ever seen, and just a perfectly flexible card that fits what Shaman is trying to accomplish really nicely. At the number 4 spot is actually another rogue card that's all about removal, but this is one that gives your weapon poisonous, which means you can turn your hero power into an assassinate on command, which is again stupidly powerful because often your hero's health in Arena means very little if you can actually leverage your health to give yourself a board advantage, and that's what Envenom Weapon allows you to do. You get to spend basically 5 mana and kill any 2 minions that your opponent plays. Often 6, 7, 8 mana minions are killed basically for a 2.5 mana investment, right? Because it takes 5 total mana to play your weapon, and Envenom, split it by 2.5 mana to kill anything in the game essentially that doesn't have exactly Divine Shield or some other death rattle that benefits it, right? So this essentially is another card that gives you the opportunity to play a lot of your own stuff while very efficiently dealing with your opponent's side of the board, swinging things into your favor and giving you a huge tempo and board initiative advantage. And now it's time for the top 3, starting off with Paladin's Spike-Ridged Steed. Stats are often, at the end of the day, king in Arena, particularly when those stats are split across multiple resources or tucked away behind a death rattle as long as it's not too slow. And because Spike-Ridged Steed bundles so many stats together, essentially this is a 4/12 total stat allocation for 6 mana, which is first off awfully good, but also the fact that Spike-Ridged Steed includes 2 taunt minions means that your opponent is actually forced to push through those stats instead of just ignoring them, thereby avoiding any of the punishing aspects of it being too slow. Spike-Ridged Steed is like the ultimate value buff card. It just does so much. Buffs are good because they are essentially stats that have charge. Death rattles are good because it's very high friction and frustrating for your opponent. Late game taunts can be good to make your opponent do things that they don't want to do or play counter to the playstyle they've played throughout the early game. The only weakness, of course, to Spike-Ridged Steed are silence effects, of which there are only a few and you don't often see them, making Spike-Ridged Steed just an absolutely overwhelming force to deal with. We've all had those games where the Paladin Spike-Ridged Steed into Spike-Ridged Steed into Spike-Ridged Steed, and suddenly they have this monster minion that you simply can't deal with, and then when you finally do find a way to answer it, guess what? They have 3 Stegodons waiting there to cause even more problems, making this one of, I would say, the most frustrating cards to play against. But man, when you land the big Spike-Ridged Steeds playing Paladin, it sure feels awfully good. Moving on to the number 2 spot, it's actually another 8 mana neutral epic minion that is one of the best late game cards we've ever seen in Arena. This time it's the Primordial Drake. Of course, area of effect spells and big taunt minions are both dominant forces in Arena, and somehow the Primordial Drake actually manages to take both and squeeze them into a single card. neutral cards just don't get better than this in Arena. You can almost not draft too many Primordial Drakes. When this card shows up, I can't imagine any other cards that are better than it to take -1 or 2 across the entire standard format set. It's the very best of swing cards, as I've talked about multiple times so far. Even if you have your own stuff on the board, often you can trade in favorable ways to set up really good Primordial Drake clears that still, of course, establish a 4/8 body. Primordial Drake might actually just be the best neutral card in the entire Arena as far as I'm concerned. But of course, there's one more card that is ultimately, at the end of the day, a little bit better. We've all heard the stories. We've all heard Creeparian gripe and moan about this card 1,000 times over, and it's the last thing that Mage actually needed, because Mage was already so strong in Arena. It already had so many different kinds of ways to deal with an opponent's board. But of course, I'm talking about Meteor. You get to deal 15 damage to a single minion and 3 damage to adjacent ones for only 6 mana. Compare that to Explosive Shot for Hunter, which was already a decent Arena card. At 5 mana, it got to do 5 and 2 damage, but for 1 extra mana, you essentially get 12 extra damage with this card. Now, of course, usually the 15 damage is a little bit overkill, but I've seen times when it's not with cards like Spike Ridge Steed out there. So it's just so cheap for what it does. It usually kills everything your opponent plays, or at the very least lines up very favorable trades in your favor, and it leaves you 4 mana to play other stuff too. I think this could be an 8 or 9 mana card, and it might still be pretty good in Arena, but at 6 mana, it's just absolutely absurd how strong Meteor is, and drafting 2, 3, or 4 of these guys in your deck is a totally reasonable decision that's frankly going to make your deck rather strong. Meteor is probably the most oppressive card in Arena right now, and really might just be the best card in Arena too. And there you have it. Those are my 10 best Journey to Un'Goro Arena cards. It's actually kind of crazy how many of these cards are so good in Arena. I don't think we've ever had an expansion where some of the very best cards in the entire set were all from one expansion, but that's exactly what Journey to Un'Goro has done. Most of the class's best cards are from this set, not to mention, of course, a few of the really good neutral cards that I pointed out as well. So I'm sure you guys have some thoughts, comments, questions about this list. I'm sure somebody's going to tell me I got the list all wrong. There might be a couple of you who think I got the list kind of sort of right. Either way, I'd love to hear your take on this list. What cards have you seen the most success with in the Un'Goro Arena meta so far? So share those in the comments below. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, game on.